She dumped her kids, sent a thug to silence me and forged my name. Now I'm fighting to save their lives. I don't think I'll ever forget the day my sister showed up unannounced at my doorstep, mascara running down her face, fake tears in her eyes, dragging her 2 kids along like emotional baggage she couldn't wait to unload. I was 33 then, just starting to put my life back together after a brutal layoff and an even more brutal breakup. I had no warning, no call, no message, just the sound of knocking that wouldn't stop. When I opened the door, she shoved past me like she owned the place. The kids looked as confused as I did, but they didn't say a word, just clutched their backpacks and stared at the floor. She dumped their bags in the hallway, turned to me with this fake sweet voice and said, "I need you to take care of them for a bit." I asked her how long, still thinking this was maybe a weekend thing, maybe an emergency, but she looked me dead in the eye and said 8 weeks. I laughed because I thought it was a joke, but she wasn't laughing. She was dead serious, said she was going to find herself in Bali or Greece or wherever her next Instagram fantasy took her. I told her no, flat out. I said I didn't sign up to be a substitute parent, that I had work, bills, a life, that I didn't even know how to handle kids, especially not ones that were clearly traumatized and confused. She didn't care, said I owed her, said I was selfish, said I always found a way to disappoint her like I disappointed everyone else. I told her if she walked out that door I was going to report her for abandonment. She looked at me for a second like she was calculating something, then turned around and walked out anyway, slammed the door behind her and blocked my number within the hour. The next few days were chaos. The kids cried a lot. They weren't used to being in a place that didn't have screens in every room or a fridge full of sugar. I tried my best, I really did. I cooked, I cleaned, I rearranged my schedule to work from home as much as possible. I even reached out to a child psychologist to ask what I should do because it was obvious that their mother hadn't just left, she had checked out a long time ago. What kind of parent vanishes for 2 months without so much as leaving medical records or emergency contacts? I was drowning and she was somewhere sipping cocktails pretending she didn't have a past. It was when I filed a police report that things really went to hell. I told them everything, that she abandoned the kids, that I wasn't their legal guardian, that I had no idea how to reach her or what she was doing. They told me they'd look into it, that this wasn't the first time they'd had issues with child endangerment involving her, and that was when I realized just how deep this went. She had done this before. Maybe not for this long, maybe not to this extreme, but she had a pattern and I was just her next pit stop. A week later I came home from getting groceries and found the front door slightly ajar. I live alone, I always lock up. I knew something was off immediately. The kids were at a neighbor's house by then. I'd asked them to watch them for an hour. I walked inside and barely had time to drop the bags before a man I'd never seen before stepped out of the kitchen holding a baseball bat. He didn't say a word, just lunged at me and swung. I barely dodged it, but he clipped my shoulder. I scrambled, slipped, slammed into the side table. He came at me again and I grabbed a lamp and smashed it into his side. He groaned and bolted, didn't even look back, just ran out the door like a coward. The cops said it was a break-in, that maybe I'd been targeted randomly, but I knew better. The next morning there was a note slipped under my door, no envelope, no signature, just 5 words written in my sister's handwriting: "Don't involve the cops again." That was just the beginning. I stared at that note for what felt like hours, 5 words, and my entire body felt like it was on fire. How dare she? How could she threaten me in my own home after dumping her children on me like they were nothing more than excess luggage on a delayed flight? I should have gone straight back to the police, but something in me cracked then, a deeper kind of anger, not the loud kind, not the kind that yells or throws punches, but the cold kind that simmers quietly and never forgets. I didn't report the assault again, not yet. I needed to understand what she was really capable of and who this man was. I started keeping the curtains drawn, moved the kids into my room so they'd be safer, installed extra locks, bought a cheap security camera setup and tried to piece together what the hell was going on. I couldn't believe how paranoid I had become, but the worst part was that I couldn't even tell the kids what had happened because they still kept asking when their mom would be back. Every time I looked at them I had to smile like everything was okay, even though I barely slept and the ache in my shoulder made it impossible to get comfortable. A week passed and then Anno. And no one came, no updates from the cops, no sign of her. The kids started to adjust to my place. They were quieter, more obedient, it broke me a little every time they said thank you after dinner like they were surprised someone had cooked for them without screaming. I began to notice how they flinched when I raised my voice even a little, how the older one never let his sister go anywhere alone, not even the bathroom. They were protecting each other in ways no children should have to. It made my blood boil because now I knew that this wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been neglecting them for a long time, maybe not in obvious ways, maybe not in ways the neighbors would have noticed, but in ways that left marks you couldn't see. Then I found out what the real plan was, and it made everything worse. One night I was going through my emails and I saw one from a lawyer I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Guardianship Consent." I opened it and saw attached a partially filled document granting me temporary custody of the kids. Apparently she tried to make it look like I had agreed to take them for a couple months. She had forged my name and even faked my signature, said I volunteered to be their guardian while she took a mental health break. I don't know how she pulled it off or who helped her, but the moment I saw that document I knew I had to act fast because this wasn't just about neglect anymore. She was trying to erase responsibility, trying to make it look like I had begged for this arrangement. I called the number listed on the form pretending to be a client and the receptionist confirmed the document was set to be filed that week. If it went through it would have changed everything. She would have legally dumped the kids on me and disappeared into thin air. I printed everything, every email, every note, every screenshot from the security cameras, even the audio logs I'd started keeping just in case she tried something again. I built a case brick by brick because I didn't want justice, I wanted accountability. I wanted the world to know what kind of person she really was, not the influencer mom who posted beach photos with perfect captions, but the woman who left her kids with a brother she hadn't spoken to in months and orchestrated an attack when he didn't comply. I took it to a lawyer this time, a real one, and I showed her everything. She listened without interrupting, then looked at me and said this was the most twisted custody mess she'd seen in years. She promised she'd help and I believed her because for the first time someone looked at me like I wasn't crazy, like this wasn't just family drama but something dangerous, illegal, real. The next morning I got a call from Child Protective Services. They'd been contacted anonymously, probably by the lawyer, and they wanted to visit. I said yes. I cleaned the apartment like it was going to be featured in a magazine, made the kids wear their best clothes, cooked a full breakfast and waited like I was being tested because in a way I was. They came in quietly, took notes, asked questions, spoke to the kids alone for a while, and then left without telling me much. I thought I was going to have a heart attack waiting for a response, but I told myself no matter what they decided, at least now the story was on paper, at least now someone official knew. 3 days later my sister came back, no warning, no apology, just showed up like she owned the place, demanded the kids back and started screaming when I told her CPS had been involved. She said I had no right, said I was trying to steal her children, said I was manipulating the whole situation. She even tried to force her way in but I had the cameras rolling and the doors locked. I called the cops again and this time when they showed up I had evidence, real evidence. I showed them the footage, handed them the forged documents, and told them about the assault. She went pale, real pale, like she didn't expect the performance to end like this. They didn't arrest her, not right then, but they did take her in for questioning, and for once I didn't feel powerless. That night I sat with the kids on the couch, we watched a movie, ate junk food, and I told them I wasn't going anywhere, not until I knew they were safe, not until she was held accountable, not until every lie she told was burned to ash. It should have ended there. But nothing ever ends when it comes to people like her, the kind who wear masks so well they forget what their real face even looks like. After that night everything moved in slow, tense waves. CPS launched a formal investigation. The kids were temporarily placed with me under supervised guardianship. I had to check in twice a week, had caseworkers visit unannounced, had to answer questions about what they ate, how often they slept, who their pediatrician was. I did it all. Not because I wanted to prove anything to her but because the kids deserved a life that didn't revolve around fear. They start calling me Uncle D more often, sometimes even Dad by accident, and I didn't correct them, not once. It scared me how easily I slipped into the role, but what scared me more was how naturally they accepted it, like they'd been waiting for someone to care this long. She, meanwhile, was unraveling. Her social media went from glamorous posts in sunny places to cryptic quotes about betrayal and being stabbed in the back. She posted one image of a broken family figurine with the caption, "Some people will do anything to look like heroes," and I knew it was about me. I didn't care, but what I did care about was the court summons I received the week after. She was suing for full custody, had filed an emergency motion to get her kids back, claiming I was manipulating them, that I had coerced them into staying, that I'd orchestrated the entire assault to frame her and gain sympathy. I wanted to laugh, but it wasn't funny, because I knew what she was capable of now, and there was no telling what kind of show she'd put on in court. I got my lawyer involved, gave her everything again. We built the case all over, but this time stronger, harder, uglier. I even tracked down the guy who attacked me and got him to confess through a sting call I recorded. He was a cousin of one of her friends, owed her a favor, didn't know what he was really walking into, and when he found out the cops were involved, he panicked and went underground. But I found him, got him to talk, gave the footage to my attorney and waited. The court date arrived like a storm cloud that wouldn't move. I wore a suit that didn't quite fit. The kid stayed with a caseworker outside while I faced her across the courtroom for the first time in weeks. She looked polished, controlled, like she'd rehearsed her pain. She cried on cue, said I'd stolen her babies, said she was struggling with mental health and needed time, said I was exploiting her moment of weakness to paint her as a monster. I wanted to stand up and scream, but my lawyer squeezed my hand and told me to wait. Then it was my turn. We showed everything, the documents, the footage, the forged signatures, the CPS reports, the statements from neighbors who'd seen her leave without a backward glance, even the security camera clips where she yelled outside my door when the police came. I didn't need to speak much, the truth was already loud enough. When the judge looked over her glasses at my sister and asked if she had anything else to say, my sister just sat there staring like a broken puppet. The mask had slipped, cracked right down the middle. The custody ruling was temporary but clear: supervised visits only, full guardianship remained with me. CPS would continue their involvement, and if anything changed for the worse she'd lose all rights permanently. She didn't react, just nodded like she was sleepwalking and walked out of the room before anyone could say another word. I thought that was the end, but the story kept unraveling. 3 days after the ruling I got a message from an anonymous account on social media, a voice note, just one sentence whispered like a threat: "You'll never keep them safe forever." I blocked the account, but the damage was done. I started locking the doors twice, carrying pepper spray, asking neighbors to keep an eye on the kids when I wasn't home. I didn't tell them about the message because they'd been doing better. The girl had stopped bedwetting, the boy had started drawing again. I didn't want to bring fear back into the house. Then something strange happened. A week later I got a package at my door, no return address. Inside was a photo album, old pictures of me and my sister as kids, some of us at the beach, some of us dressed up for Halloween, and on the last page there was a Polaroid I'd never seen before, me holding her firstborn at the hospital. I looked tired, but I was smiling. She'd written something on the back, years ago probably. For when I forget who really stood by me, and for a second it felt like a wound reopening in a place I didn't know still bled. But it didn't last, because 2 nights later someone broke into my backyard, didn't steal anything, just left a broken toy car on the porch, one I recognized from the kid's closet, the kind of move that was too calculated to be random. I reported it again. The cops made a report but told me there wasn't enough for an arrest, so I did the only thing I could. I started documenting everything, every noise in the night, every misplaced item, every whisper that didn't belong, and I started preparing for the war I knew wasn't over. Because this wasn't about motherhood for her anymore, it was about control, about winning, about rewriting the past with her as the victim and me as the villain. But what she didn't know was that I had already been broken once and I had no intention of letting it happen again. Not with the kids watching. I didn't sleep that night, sat by the window with a bat in my lap and the security feed open on my phone. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps, every creak in the walls felt like a warning. By morning I looked like a ghost, but I still made breakfast, still packed the kids' lunches, still walked them to school like nothing was wrong, because fear doesn't get to win when 2 little lives are counting on you to be unshakable. After I dropped them off I drove straight to the police station with the photo of the toy car, the security footage, and the copy of the forged guardianship form. I demanded they escalate the case, told them she was playing games and that the next one could cost someone's life. They listened, barely, but they logged it, gave me the same empty promise they'd look into it. I knew better than to wait for them. So I made a decision. I filed for permanent custody, real legal protection this time, no temporary arrangements, no shared rights. I wanted full legal guardianship and I was prepared to drag everything out of the shadows to get it. I hired a private investigator, used what little savings I had left to track her movements, her online aliases, even her therapist, which by the way didn't exist. She'd lied about the entire mental health narrative just to spin sympathy. The investigator uncovered enough to show she was planning to flee the country again, already had new passports issued under aliases for both kids with a forged consent letter signed under my name. I couldn't believe it. She was going to steal them, disappear, and I wouldn't even have known until it was too late. We presented everything in court 2 weeks later, this time with the urgency it deserved. The judge listened, reviewed the evidence, and granted me sole legal custody, revoked her visitation rights indefinitely, ordered an immediate investigation into potential child trafficking and fraud. I couldn't breathe when I heard it. I had spent so long holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and now it had, on her. She didn't show up in court, sent a lawyer who looked embarrassed just to be reading her statement, in which she claimed she was misunderstood, overwhelmed, and unfairly targeted by a vengeful brother, but her words had no weight left. They'd crumbled under the weight of facts, of truth, of 2 terrified children who had finally started to smile again. A warrant was issued for her arrest 2 days later. She vanished, her phone numbers disconnected, her accounts wiped. Just like that she was smoke, but this time I was ready. Her face was on local news, her story was being investigated across platforms. She couldn't hide forever and she knew it. A month passed and I started to feel the cracks seal, slowly, like old wounds learning how to close without scars that ache in the rain. The kids laughed more, the boy told me he wanted to be a teacher, the girl made a card that said, "You're the best dad who's not really my dad," and I cried in the bathroom where they couldn't see me because I didn't know I could feel anything that deep anymore. Then one morning I got a letter, hand-delivered, no stamp, just folded paper shoved into the mailbox. I knew it was her before I even opened it, and I was right. It was short, desperate, rambling. She said she'd made mistakes, that she missed them, that she was going to take them back one day and raise them right, that I could never love them the way she did because they weren't mine. I didn't show it to the kids, just handed it to the authorities and added it to the file, but I kept a copy. Not for revenge or memory, but as a reminder that people don't change when they're forced to, only when they choose to, and she never had. She's still out there, maybe in another state, maybe another country, maybe planning her next move, but I don't live in fear anymore because this isn't her story. It's mine now, and more importantly, it's theirs. The kids and I moved a few months later, new city, new names at school, new beginnings. I got a better job, something flexible so I could be around more. We painted their room yellow because they said it felt like sunshine and safe dreams. I keep the security system armed, the doors locked, the routine solid, not because I expect her but because I'll never forget what she's capable of. People still ask me if I regret taking them in, if I would do it again knowing everything that followed, and my answer is always the same: yes, because I saved 2 lives when someone else tried to escape hers. And if you've ever been in my shoes, if you've ever had to choose between comfort and what's right, then you already know the truth. Blood doesn't make you family, love does, protection does, sacrifice does. So if you're reading this, tell me, was I the villain she claimed I was, or was I just the brother who finally said no? If you made it this far, like, comment your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories you won't believe are real.